2021 was a year full of great new films and shows, some of which were among some of the best in their class. But there was one film that stood out among all the rest. One film that grabbed a hold of me and sucked me down a rabbit hole so deep that it wasn't until 4 viewings and 3 books later that I have finally emerged as a changed man. That film was Denis Villeneuve's newest sci-fi masterpiece and my newest obsession, Dune. Dune was originally written in 1965 by the late great author Frank Herbert. It is a massive story that spans across as many as 13 novels and many more short stories. It deals with complex intersections between multifaceted characters, psychology, politics, religion, technology, economics, supernatural abilities, and even the nature of what it means to be human. It was groundbreaking in its day and has been a primary influence of many other science fiction universes, including another one of my favorite films set in a galaxy far, far away. Due to its sheer breadth, Dune has historically been notoriously hard to adapt to film. There have been a few attempts, such as David Lynch's 1984 film Dune, which certainly had its strengths but made some, interesting decisions. There was even a lesser-known TV show by the name of Children of Dune, featuring James McAvoy in the lead no less, that focused on stories from some of the later novels, but failed to gain much traction. As such, Denis Villeneuve had quite the task ahead of him when he decided to take on bringing Dune to a modern audience on the big screen. Fortunately, there probably isn't a better person alive equipped to do so, considering that Denis is one of the most talented filmmakers of our generation. It's fair to say that the veteran filmmaker has never made a bad film, and has a special talent for science fiction. His thought-provoking First Contact film, Arrival, was met by massive public and critical acclaim in 2016. He followed it up in 2017 with his incredible sequel to the cult classic Blade Runner, with Blade Runner 2049, a film that was able to stay true to the themes of the original while still telling a unique and exciting new story. Both films also won Oscars for Best Cinematography, among others. Denis is a master of tone, pacing, and scale who is perfectly adapted to deliver the definitive Dune film, and man, did he deliver. The story is set far in the future, where humanity has become an interplanetary species. One governing emperor rules over all of humanity, with ruling noble families in power on each individual planet in a sort of futuristic feudal system. Most of this tale takes place on Arrakis, a desert planet that is so hot it is covered in nothing but giant rolling hills of sand and rock, hence its nickname Dune. It is almost completely devoid of life, save for the massive sandworms, gargantuan creatures that can sense movement on the surface of the sand. But most importantly, it is the single home to the powerful hallucinogenic drug known as the spice, which is essential to interplanetary travel, and therefore the most valuable resource in all of the universe. This is where our main characters come into play. Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet, is the first and only son to the Duke Leto Atreides, played by Oscar Isaac, and the Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson. All of the performances from the main cast are incredible, with an especially powerful showing from Rebecca Ferguson as the Lady Jessica. One of the first challenges that Denis must have faced when developing the screenplay is adapting Dune's characters to film. Frank Herbert was known for waxing long over philosophical questions, especially in the later Dune novels, and his characters often serve as viewpoints that explore those questions. While this is usually true of most characters and stories, Herbert builds it so deeply into his characters that it's hard to encapsulate them without a lot of exposition. In fact, much of Herbert's writing in the books are long bits of exposition describing what particular characters are thinking. Capturing the essence of those characters for the big screen without the ability to spend hours on exposition is one of the many reasons it has been said that Dune is unadaptable to film. But Denis uses his talented cast expertly, relying on his actors' physical performances to convey in seconds what would have taken a long time to say out loud. Let's look back at Rebecca Ferguson as the Lady Jessica executing this to perfection. In perhaps the most famous scene from the film, Paul Atreides is awoken in the middle of the night and dragged in front of a woman who presents him with a test of his humanity. The test involves putting him through immense pain and under the threat of death if he doesn't pass. All of this is done with the consent and knowledge of Paul's mother, the Lady Jessica, who guards the door to the room the test is taking place in so that it may not be interrupted. In all of this 4-minute and 10-second scene, Rebecca Ferguson has about 60 seconds to tell a story. In the following clips, I've removed everything except Ferguson's time on screen, as well as the audio, to see what we can learn from her physical acting alone. At the beginning of the scene, we first see Lady Jessica guiding her son Paul into the room where he will face his deadly test. Paul doesn't know what's happening, but Lady Jessica does, and her slow steps and eyes that stare downward show her unease. She issues some final words to her son before exiting quickly, as if to stop herself from dragging her son with her. Outside, her head bowed, she seems to contemplate the danger she has put her son in, unsure if he will exit the room alive. This begins to manifest as panic, fear, and regret as Jessica begins to break, but at the last moment she steadies herself with a breath. She begins to speak out loud to herself, her words obviously giving her some of her resolve back. That resolve turns into an intense focus, the words seeming to take her away from the moment, and you can see some ease come to her face. For one last second, the fear grips her again, but passes through her, leaving only a calm acceptance. Rebecca Ferguson doesn't waste a single second of the 60 she is given in teaching us about this character. We learn that Jessica is a woman torn between devotion and her love for her son. We learn that she is in deep control of her emotions, using words to calm and focus herself. Finally, we learn that Jessica is struggling with a question, the most obvious one being, what if my son dies? But there's actually a more accurate question that this scene foretells, that being, what if I am wrong? In the very next scene of the film, we learn that Jessica believes that her son Paul is the quote-unquote chosen one, foretold to bring balance to the universe. Sound familiar? And that the test was to confirm that belief. And so, Rebecca's performance serves not only to inform us about her character, the Lady Jessica, but to inform the plot as well. It is fantastic character work and directing choices like this that are the beating heart of this film, climbing the previously unassailable mountain of Frank Herbert's text. However, all of this still isn't enough to deliver a successful adaptation of Dune. Now, I am a firm believer that compelling characters in extenuating circumstances that force them to grow and change are the makings of a great story, and Dune is no different. But it is hard to understate how important Dune's setting is to its effectiveness. The desert planet on which it is set is not simply a canvas for the characters to play on. The genius of Dune is the interplay between the characters and the setting. It defines their limits, changes them, forces them to adapt, and ingrains itself into their very identity. Herbert was very interested in how a different environment can change a person, and what extreme environments may do to groups of people over time. It was a central theme in the novel, and he does substantial legwork in detailing the ecology of Arrakis and the people who make it their home. Every creature that is on the face of the planet is adapted to the extreme environment there, from the tiniest mouse to the colossal sandworms. Depicting this dynamic world in a way that feels as real and active as the characters do was imperative to the success of the film. To accomplish this, Villeneuve had to use a combination of clever camera work, immense sets, and innovative special effect choices to deliver on his vision of Arrakis. One of the central challenges in portraying the world of Dune is dealing with scale. Like most fictional worlds, Dune features things from real life blown up to absurd sizes, including not only the massive sandworms, but immense spaceships, cities, machines, and rooms that dwarf the characters themselves. It could be very easy to lose the characters in that huge world, or to miss the world entirely with too much focus on the characters. But watch how Villeneuve and his lead cinematographer Greg Fraser frame their shots to give us that sense of scale and intimacy at the same time. In this clip of Paul and Jessica running from a sandworm, we get a close-up of Paul reacting to the creature in front of him. The details of his mask and hood, as well as the expression in his eyes, are clear and readable, and he takes up about half of the screen. Then we pull away to a wide shot of what he is looking at, the sandworm in front of him. While technically shot as a wide shot, this shot is actually functioning as a close-up of the creature. You can see similar amounts of detail, and it occupies a similar amount of the screen as the former shot of Paul. And finally, it resolves on what I have come to call the Villeneuve perspective shot, one that he employs to great effect in his science fiction films. The shot puts the viewer in the shoes of the character, evoking the feeling of being in front of something huge, which really sells the scale of what you're looking at on screen. The pattern of close-ups with the characters, wide shots of the world, and a comparative shot of the two together evokes a kind of narrative dance between the two. We're able to feel the weight of the characters' emotions, yet also get the full feel of the fantastical worlds around them. Most importantly, we get a character's perspective on what it's like to interact with the world, which is perhaps the hardest thing for a science fiction film to do. Of course, the work behind the camera works in tandem with what is in front of it to really sell a fictional world. Dune feels surprisingly grounded in its presentation, despite its absurdly large scope as a science fiction film. Most science fiction films exist on a spectrum of realism, with films like Avatar, the giant blue people one, being more towards fantastical anti-realism, and films like The Martian or even Interstellar, which try to be more grounded in reality. Dune, despite being set on a fantastical world that features alien creatures, galactic societies, and otherworldly powers and technologies, is presented closer to the realism side of the spectrum. Villeneuve's handling of special effects, as well as his commitment to building insane sets and models, is what makes Arrakis look and feel so real. He generally approaches special effects as a tool to embellish his film rather than to simply be his film. In a world where heavy CGI is more common every year, the result is refreshing. One technique that he employed to keep elements of realism was the creation of giant sand-colored green screens. This way, characters in the scenes would have sand-colored lighting reflecting off of the screens so that CGI could be built around them, but the lighting would always feel desert real. The result is CG that is effective, cool, and otherworldly, but somehow feels more plausible than, say, a Marvel Avengers movie. The film was mostly filmed in real locations such as Jordan and Abu Dhabi, as well as Origo Film Studios in Budapest. Relying on real locations for most of the desert scenes certainly does a lot to ground the film on its own, but the sets built for the film were just as convincing. As I've mentioned a few times already, the sets themselves are absurdly big, and great care and thought was put into their design. They give the characters a place to really exist and play in three-dimensional space that feels like a place you could actually visit. The result is a Dune film that draws us into its world and characters in a visceral way you don't often get out of a science fiction movie. To say Villeneuve's Dune was a big undertaking is an even bigger understatement. The movie is 2 hours and 35 minutes long and only covers half of the story from the first Dune novel. But the film we have is a fantastic representation of the story so far, achieving what no other Dune film or show has been able to achieve. This is due to an extremely talented cast and very tight writing that uses visual storytelling to do the work that Frank Herbert's exposition did in the book. Their performances deliver multi-dimensional characters that draw us into the story. The way that the characters are then able to blend into a very grounded and real-feeling Arrakis is made possible by great directing and cinematography, in combination with awesome special effects and large, intelligently designed sets. The result is the first successful Dune adaptation to film, and certainly the best one, in my opinion, of course. So, while I eagerly await Dune Part 2, if this was a film you missed, go back and give it a try. And then watch it 3 more times, and then go read a bunch of the books, and then go back and watch it just 1 more time to gather your thoughts for a video that you're going to make about it. Or maybe just watch it once and enjoy, and leave the obsession to me. See you next time.
Hi,
Thanks for stopping by and watching my video on Dune. It was a ton of fun to make and was my first ever video, but it won't be the last. My obsessions do change like the wind, and so next month I'm going to be talking about my favorite film from 2022, which was Everything Everywhere All at Once by the directing duo known as the Daniels. If you want to see that video when it comes out, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you liked the video you just watched, go ahead and leave me a like, or you can leave me a comment and I'll reply to any that I get. So hopefully we'll see you on the next video, and in the meantime, go and check out Dune either for the first time, the second, third, fourth, or many more. We'll see you on the next video.